She said, "Stay or go, but I'm not giving up on you." I said, "I'm here to stay." That was the moment everything shifted between us, the quiet after a storm, where nothing is settled, but everything feels like it could change. I remember the exact way the afternoon sunlight slanted through the half-open window, dust motes dancing lazily in the air. It was the kind of stillness that should have been comfortable, but instead it was heavy, like waiting for something neither of us wanted to admit. She sat across from me, a little tense, fingers brushing absent-mindedly over the chipped rim of her coffee cup. Mid-40s, but there was a softness around her eyes, the kind only time and lived pain can sculpt. She wasn't the woman people glanced at twice in a room, but to me, she was impossible to look away from. I was barely 25, with too much restless energy to settle down, or so I told myself. But sitting there, catching the subtle tremble when she spoke, hearing her voice barely above a whisper, I knew there was more to this than just attraction. There was history, regret, something fragile threading between us. She swallowed hard, then met my eyes. "I don't want to lose you," she said, voice raw but steady. "Even if you think you need to go." Her words felt like a confession, not the dramatic, movie kind, but the quiet truth that sits in the spaces between people who've come close to breaking. I wanted to say something perfect, but the words stuck. Instead, I reached out, my hand hovering for a moment before I finally touched hers. It wasn't a grand gesture, just a gentle pressure, like promising without speaking. "I'm here," I said, voice a little rough. "I'm not going anywhere." Her eyes flickered, like she wanted to believe me but was afraid to. That hesitation was the crack in her armor I didn't want to close too quickly. The room was silent except for the ticking of the old clock on the wall, the air thick with things left unsaid. Outside, a soft breeze stirred the curtains, as if the world itself was holding its breath. I studied the slight furrow in her brow, the way her lips parted but no sound came out. Vulnerability was new for her, and maybe for me too. It wasn't about age, or differences, or whatever the world might whisper behind our backs. It was about two people, scared and hopeful, trying to hold on when everything felt uncertain. Then, just as I opened my mouth to say something, anything, the sharp ring of the doorbell cut through the stillness like a sudden gust of wind. We both jumped. She glanced at the door, then back at me, eyes wide but steady. The moment hung there, suspended, fragile and electric. And in that silence, I knew this was only the beginning. I opened the door. No one was there, just the soft echo of footsteps fading down the hall. A careless delivery, maybe. But the interruption pulled us out of the quiet bubble we'd been trapped in, the one where everything was on the verge of breaking or healing. She let out a breath I hadn't realized she was holding. "Sorry," she said, tucking a stray lock of hair behind her ear. "It's probably just the delivery guy. Or, maybe it's my past trying to catch up." I studied her, the way her eyes darkened for a split second, like a secret shadow sliding across them. That shadow wasn't new to me. Over the months we'd spent awkward dinners and stolen glances, I'd learned there was more to her story than the calm exterior she showed the world. Her name was Mara. She'd been married once, to a man who'd left quietly, but not without leaving cracks that still showed. The kind of cracks that didn't heal with time, just got harder to hide. I'd heard the half-told stories, the quiet nights she spent staring out her window, the regrets wrapped tightly around her heart. And then there was me, a younger man with restless energy and a past filled with mistakes I tried to forget. Our connection wasn't just complicated by years, it was tangled with the fact that she was my best friend's mother. A fact neither of us dared to speak aloud but that hung between us like a fragile glass sculpture, beautiful but dangerously close to shattering. I wanted to ask if she was scared. I wanted to say that I was too. But instead, I found myself biting my lip, hands shoved deep in my pockets, pretending the tension wasn't real. "You know, I said finally, voice low, I never thought I'd get this close to you. It wasn't about age or judgment, just the sheer improbability of it all. She smiled, a little sad, a little tired. Neither did I. But here we are. Her gaze drifted down to our hands resting near each other on the armrest, an electric pause between us. There was a long silence, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It felt like the space where two broken things could maybe fit together, even if only for a moment. Then she leaned in just enough for me to feel her breath, barely brushing my cheek. Stay or go, she whispered, echoing her earlier words, but no, I'm not giving up on us. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. Instead, I reached out slowly and let my fingers brush hers, not quite holding, but not letting go. In that touch was everything we weren't saying, the risks, the fears, the hope. The world outside was noisy, chaotic. But here, in this small room, it was just us. Two flawed people, tangled in something neither of us could explain but neither wanted to run from. The moment stretched, fragile and electric, and I realized this was no longer just about desire. It was about holding on when everything told us to let go. And in that silence, I knew the hardest part was still ahead. The knock wasn't loud, but it cracked through the quiet like a shot. My heart caught in my throat before I even recognized the voice behind the door. Mara? You home? Her breath hitched. I barely noticed the door shift as she moved to peek through the peephole. It's Mark, she whispered, voice tight. Mark, her ex-husband. Not exactly the ghost I wanted to show up unannounced right now. I could feel her tension before she spoke again. Stay here, she said, eyes flickering to mine. The second stretched. I leaned back against the wall, muscles coiled, mind racing with every possible nightmare. Mark's voice drifted through the door again, louder this time, we need to talk. I swallowed hard. Mara's hesitation was a silent scream. She opened the door just a crack, face unreadable. Not now, she said firmly. There was a pause, a sigh, then footsteps retreating down the hall. I exhaled slowly, but the tight knot in my chest didn't loosen. We turned back inside. Mara's hand brushed mine, a fleeting touch, electric and terrifying. I hate that he still has this hold on me, she muttered. I get it, I said, voice low. But you don't have to carry it alone. Her eyes searched mine, vulnerable and raw, before she stepped closer, close enough for me to catch the faint scent of her perfume, warm and a little nostalgic. We stood there, caught between what was safe and what was forbidden. Then, suddenly, her gaze dropped, and she took a step back. I shouldn't. I can't, her voice cracked, a tremor betraying her strength. I'm not asking you to decide now, I whispered. The weight of the moment pressed down on us. Then, almost without thinking, I reached out, fingers trembling, and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. She didn't pull away. For a heartbeat, the world shrank until it was just the two of us, breathing, aching, unsure. But then the doorbell rang again, sharper this time, slicing through the fragile bubble. Mara jumped, eyes wide, and I realized just how tangled we were. We weren't just fighting for each other, we were battling shadows from the past, secrets waiting to explode. And despite the fear, the guilt, and the impossible odds, neither of us wanted to let go. That night, nothing was resolved. But everything had changed. The days after Mark's visit felt like walking on a tightrope stretched thin over a bottomless pit. Every look she gave me, every silence between us, was charged, thick with things we dared not say. I caught Mara watching me one evening as I fiddled with the keys to her apartment. Her eyes weren't just curious, there was something sharper there, a flicker I hadn't seen before. I saw him again today, she said quietly, voice barely above a whisper. I stopped, keys still in hand. Mark? She nodded, biting her lip. He wants to meet. Wants to clear things up. My jaw tightened. It wasn't jealousy, or maybe it was, in the way a slow burn can turn into a wildfire without warning. But I pushed the feeling down, swallowed it. Do you want to go? She hesitated, then shook her head. No. But it doesn't stop him. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, fingers twitching with restless energy. The space between us was shrinking and growing all at once, confusing and magnetic. Then, out of nowhere, Mara's hand found mine in the dark. I'm scared, she admitted. Her voice cracked, a fragile admission I hadn't heard before. Of what? I asked, voice soft but steady. Losing you. Or losing myself. I tightened my grip, pulling her closer without words. But beneath the warmth was the jagged edge of fear, the kind that makes you want to scream or run. The next evening, we were sitting on the worn couch in her living room, the glow of the street lamp casting shadows over her face. She looked at me, really looked, like she was trying to read every secret I held. I don't know if this is right, she said suddenly. My heart hammered. What do you want? Her eyes flickered, uncertain. I want us. But I'm terrified of what comes after. I reached out, brushing her fingers with mine, that electric touch again, a promise and a question all at once. Then the silence stretched too long, thick and heavy. She took a deep breath, and in that breath, everything shifted. I don't want to lose you, she whispered. I leaned in, heart racing, the space between us closing. And just as our lips were about to meet, the sharp beep of her phone shattered the moment. She jumped back, eyes wide, a text flashing on the screen. The room went cold. And in that pause, everything hung on a knife's edge. The text on Mara's phone glowed like a sudden spotlight in the dim room. I caught a glimpse before she shoved the device face down on the coffee table, a name I didn't recognize and words that stung without even being read aloud. I should have told you, she whispered, voice cracking. But I was scared it would ruin everything. My mind spun, trying to catch up. What wasn't she telling me? She hesitated, then finally met my eyes. Mark, he's not just an ex. He's been sending me money, keeping me afloat when I was drowning. That wasn't the worst part. He wants me to move back. Says he's changed. I felt the air thin between us, like the walls were closing in. Why didn't you say anything? I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. Because it's complicated, she said, a desperate edge creeping in. Because I thought, maybe you wouldn't want this if you knew. I wanted to shout, to demand the truth, but all I could do was sit there, absorbing the betrayal in silence. Then my phone buzzed. A message from my roommate, Liam, dude, saw you with Mara. Thought you should know, her daughter called me. She's worried. Words spreading. My throat tightened. We weren't just two people tangled in a risky romance anymore, we were now caught in a web that threatened to unravel everything. Mara's hands trembled as she reached for mine again. I'm sorry, she said. But the apology felt small against the weight of what we were facing. I looked at her, the woman who'd quietly become my anchor, and for the first time, I saw the cracks beneath her strength. We can't keep hiding, I said, voice raw. Not from them, not from ourselves. Her eyes filled with tears, but there was also something fierce in their depths. Maybe that's what scares me the most. We sat in silence, the night stretching out around us like a fragile promise, broken, yet somehow still holding on. And just when I thought we might find a way through, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a voicemail from Mara's daughter. A voice trembling with worry, asking questions neither of us were ready to answer. The stakes had never been higher. The voicemail played over the quiet room, Mara's daughter's voice trembling with worry and confusion. We sat side by side, the glow from the speakerphone casting shadows over her face, lines softened, but eyes sharp with raw fear. I looked at Mara, her hands clenched tightly in her lap, jaw trembling like she was holding back everything at once. "This is it," I whispered. "We can't hide anymore." She nodded slowly, eyes fixed somewhere beyond me, as if trying to gather strength from the air itself. "I'm terrified," she admitted, voice barely audible. "Not of what they'll say, but of losing everything we've built, or worse, losing ourselves in the process." I reached out, fingers brushing hers in the kind of touch that says, "I'm here. We'll figure this out." "Love isn't about pretending it's easy," I said, voice rough but steady. "It's about standing through the storms, messy and all." Her eyes finally met mine, vulnerable, searching, and somehow fierce. "I don't know where this goes," she said, voice breaking. "But I do know I'm tired of running from it." We both knew the risks, the judgments, the whispers, the fractures that might never fully heal. But in that moment, all that faded beneath the weight of something real, a choice. She squeezed my hand. "Stay or go," she said softly, echoing her words from weeks before. "I'm choosing to stay." I smiled, breathless and shaky. "Me too." Outside, the world hummed on, indifferent, loud, chaotic. But inside, in this fragile space, two imperfect souls had carved out a place to belong. As we sat there, hand in hand, the future stretched uncertain and wide. Whatever came next, we faced it together. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The morning light filtered softly through the curtains, casting a gentle glow over the quiet apartment. Mara and I sat across from each other at the small kitchen table, the air between us lighter than it had been in weeks, not because everything was solved, but because we'd finally stopped pretending that it could be. She stirred her coffee slowly, eyes distant but calm. "It won't be easy," she said quietly. "There will be days when doubt creeps in, when the world feels too heavy." I nodded, feeling the truth in her words. "But we're not alone. And that makes a difference." For once, there were no walls between us, no secrets waiting in the shadows. We had laid everything out, the fears, the past mistakes, the messy realities of our lives. And somehow, that honesty had built a fragile bridge. I reached across the table and took her hand, the same hand that had held mine through moments of fear and hope. "We're starting something real," I said. "No guarantees. Just us, figuring it out." She smiled, a slow, genuine smile that reached her eyes. "I never thought I'd find this, not at this point in my life." "Neither did I admitted. But maybe it's not about when. Maybe it's about who." There was a quiet comfort in that, a gentle promise that we could face whatever came next. Because love, the kind that stays, isn't about perfect timing or easy answers. It's about two people choosing each other, over and over, even when it's hard. As we sat there, hand in hand, the phone buzzed softly. A message from Mara's daughter, a simple, "I'm here when you're ready." A reminder that life would keep moving, with all its complexities. But for now, in this small moment, we had peace. And that felt like enough.